Welcome to the Shattering Inequities podcast, where we uncover the bold, research-driven strategies that are transforming education for every student, especially those historically left behind. In each episode, we'll highlight leaders who are not just imagining a better future, but actively creating one. Through real-world successes, challenges, and actionable insights, this podcast is a space to crowdsource solutions that advance shattering inequities in education. And now, here's your host, Dr. Avelar La Salle. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Shattering Inequities podcast, where we believe that every student is entitled to a premium education, no matter where they live, where they go to school, or what their circumstance. With me today is somebody I'm so proud to introduce. Her name is Dr. Katherine Aguirre, and she is one of the most impactful educational justice advocates that I've had the pleasure of meeting. We've known each other in many capacities over the years, and I thank you so much, Katherine, for agreeing to share some of your wisdom with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
What I want to say is that, Katherine, right now you serve as the superintendent, proud superintendent that you say all the time, of the Mojave Unified School District, which I would argue, based on data regarding conditions outside of a school system's control, is one of the top most challenged communities for a variety of reasons. So in order to best understand the impact that you're having and that we have results to demonstrate, can you share a little bit about what the conditions are that surround, swirl, encompass, engulf the schools and communities that you serve?
Absolutely. So yes, I am the very proud and very honored superintendent for Mojave Unified School District. And the name itself will tell you where we are. We're in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And by desert, I mean, everybody laughs and says we're 100 miles from everywhere. It's more like 48, but it's pretty far out here. We are in two separate communities. So our first community is unincorporated portion of Kern County, which is Mojave. It's about 4,800 population. The other part of our district is California City. California City is about 14,000 population, but we are all Mojave Unified School District. What that does for us, is that our schools can be up to 19 miles apart. And so from one side of our district to the other side of our district is quite a trek, and there's nothing in between. We are a community without a large medical facility. We have some EMS services, but they're pretty sparse. We have one grocery store for both communities, and it happens to be in Mojave, not Cal City. So the majority of our community is about 18 miles from the grocery store. And socioeconomically, we struggle as an entire district. I won't say everybody, but the majority of our community does struggle economically. And so you can imagine the impact of not having medical facilities or having to drive so far to a grocery store when you don't have a car or when there's no public transportation. And so all of those things impact. We are over the hill and through the woods from the county seat. And what that means is that all of the centralized services are really concentrated on the other side of the hill and not East Kern. So we are part of East Kern. And so if you need backup when mental health assistance, or if you need any kind of pet team, etc., they just don't come here. And so we have had to organize with our fellow East Kern community superintendents and kind of pull together on our own, which has brought about some really good strengths and then also highlighted some areas where we need some assistance. So all of that used to say something about what was happening here, and it doesn't really anymore, but it's been a long time that we've been working. I will say those are our downsides. Our great sides, and what we just always focusing on, is we are absolutely center of everything historical that's happened in California. If I look out my window, I can see a working gold mine. I intentionally made sure that my office was where I could see the gold mine. Train also passes right there. So we are a train hub. Santa Fe Railroad comes through here all day, every day, and it is the central point for almost everything that gets delivered to any place in California comes through these train tracks. So that's amazing. We are neighbors and share a lot and a playground with the Mojave Air and Spaceport, where Virgin Galactic, where Northrop, where you name it, they are there and they are developing state of the art aircraft, spacecraft, rocket launches going off there. There are F-35s, 25s, whatever they are. They're amazing. They're beautiful. They make so much noise. Yeah, it's so exciting for me, right? Like I'm a plane person, so it's just I feel the need for speed is all the time. So that's amazing. We're also right next to Edwards Air Force Base, so you know all the wonderful things that happen there. And this is where the sound barrier was broken, right? So Chuck Yeager, this is where he did it, and it is such rich history, and we just make sure that that's what we focus on and making new history.
And I know that you focus on the positive aspects of your community all the time. That's how you see the world. I also happen to have been there once or 10 times, and that's not what you see when you drive through. Katherine, you're situated in one of the highest crime areas, particularly related to drug enterprise. Among poverty, you have that aspect as well and everything that comes with it. I have driven by many times and felt like it was a scene out of the Twilight Zone. The one you wake up and open the door and everything is still and blazing hot and nobody's moving and no one's out and nobody's shades are open and everybody's doors are locked and you don't see any people walking, you don't see children, you don't hear sounds. Like a typical regular school day outside of the schools seems like the community's just frozen. And I know there are lots of reasons for that. And yet, as you say, you lead with what you lead with. And maybe that's part of your success, and maybe that's part of what we need to grab onto. Given that, what I'd like to know is this. I was thinking about you earlier today, and I thought when I first started this in this profession, a few more than a few decades ago, I remember people saying, "Oh, you know what? There are peacetime leaders and wartime leaders." And not all peacetime leaders are great in a wartime situation and vice versa. And I was always very offended, and I still am, because I don't think schools are war zones at all. We have challenges and all that, but they're the most beautiful places on earth as far as I'm concerned. And so I hate that military metaphor, but I understand the sentiment now. And which is, as I was reflecting on you, I thought, so not even amazing leaders, not every amazing leader has the vision, disposition, resilience, content knowledge, finesse, and et cetera, to be able to be effective at improving student outcomes. You could do other things in a school district like yours, but improving student outcomes takes a certain je ne sais quoi, or yo no sé qué, as the case may be. And similarly, I'm not sure everybody who's suited to really being in the most, have places that serve students with the highest conditions for risk of academic struggles. I'm not sure leaders who are best suited for that would be great leaders in a very affluent area with very, highly educated, involved parents who have points of view about this, that, and the other. I think it does require different types of leaders. So, and I think you're perfectly suited for sure where you are. So I ask you this: what made Katherine, the Dr. Katherine Aguirre of today, that's so suited to doing the kinds of lifts that are required to change lives now, tomorrow, for your students, for their families, and for generations to come? Give us a little bit of your background, that what made Katherine Katherine. And if you don't mind dropping in there a couple of your not on my watch moments, those times in your life where you said, absolutely not. And that helped shape the principles, the foundations upon which you lead today. Would you mind sharing some of that with us?
Sure. So I think a lot of the not on my watches came later when I knew better. And maybe at the time I didn't know better, but I had to reflect. So I really take this really back almost generationally, right? So my grandparents came here because there was definitely a need to make things better. And so they sacrificed a lot to get here and brought their 10 children with them and then had two more. Um, and so there are a dozen in my mom's family, and my grandfather on my dad's side came, through Phoenix, maybe. I don't know exactly where he came through, but he came through, and he always had his lawyer's hat on. But it was a lot of what I would call elder sacrifice, right? To make sure that the next generations, and I'm the second generation after that, ended up a little bit better off than the last. And so I take that to heart. I take it very seriously. I really feel like my parents and their parents sacrificed enough. And now it's time for us to make good. And so that's my motivation. I also didn't have the best experiences in school as a student. I know that my parents didn't have the best experiences in school with as students. My family is LA Unified. They went to LA Unified, which was huge. And for so many, they did such a great job. And my mom is right. She was the college prep, and here we go. It's going to go. And that level, that high level student. And my dad struggled. Right. And so there's that juxtaposition about who was provided that premium education, who was acknowledged, and who was supported. And luckily, both of my parents did very well. And my dad was able to get this great job in a factory where he was able, between the two of them, to provide an amazing upbringing for my sister and I. And I won't say it was always, roses and cajeta, but it was always, you never really went without, right? Like you didn't get everything you wanted, but you always had everything you needed. And I remember my dad making sure that we weren't doing the dishes because he wanted us doing homework, right? And he didn't want us taking classes that were fun. He wanted us taking more math, right? Or he wanted us taking another reading class, or he wanted and that was because he knew it was difficult if you weren't well educated. And so that was my motivation. And then later on came from those experiences and that observation, one of the not on my watch, right? And the not on my watch for that was just because you struggle doesn't mean you shouldn't be getting the attention and the support, because my father's brilliant. He absolutely is. He could have been an architect, which is what he wanted to do, because I've seen him build anything from nothing. And I know he can use a CAD program, but he struggles with literacy. And had that been caught early, I don't know what he would have been able to do. We won't ever know that. And that's not going to happen if I can help it, right? That's making sure everybody is attended to, making sure everybody's needs are addressed and not just that upper 20%, or even sometimes the 20% that are most needy, right? We get the both sides of the spectrum and they get the most attention, but what about what about the all, right? So that was the first not on my watch. And I had no intention of becoming a teacher. I didn't. Again, I had a terrible experience in school. I just didn't enjoy it. I was not connected.
That's always so hard for me. Whenever I see exemplary educators say that, I knew I wanted to be a teacher from the time I could talk. So to think that you could switch over into this, that you weren't born to it, or maybe you were born to it, you just didn't know it.
Maybe. I mean, that's possible, right? That's a possibility, but I wanted to be a police officer. And so that was my first degree, as in administration of justice. And
Really?
yeah. And so I spent a lot of time in that field, doing different things, private sector stuff. But it was definitely not my first love. But I had such an experience in high school that I was at a rapid speed because I needed to get out of there. Right. And so I made sure that I took college classes because it gave me double the credit. I didn't think about it was giving me college credit. I think about, oh, this is going to get me out of here faster. Right. And so that's how I graduated. I graduated early from high school and just went to work. I was going to junior college and I kind of ended up in this churn at junior college and was there for a super long time. I didn't know that was typical. Right. I didn't know that that's the norm even now.
It's not
And
a good thing. It's not a good thing.
it's absolutely not, right? You're supposed to be done and go to the next place, right? Nope, I just kept churning. So the transition came where my significant other was transferring because I had met him in junior college and he was like, "Oh, I got into Cal State Northridge." And I said, "Are you going?" He said, "What do you mean? Of course I'm going." And that was a foreign topic to me. He's like, "You're going too." I was like, "Me? No, I'm not going." "Oh, no, you're going." Okay, so we went. I don't know. What else am I doing, right? So, okay. And I graduated from there and then went, now what? Now what do I do? And becoming a police officer was no longer an option because I now had a 3-year-old. And so that was not that we discussed that as a family, and he was just not very supportive of that. And so he said, you need to do something that's a lot safer. Okay. My sister was a teacher. Let me try that. So I went and I hung out in my sister's class and said, okay, I could do this. And I started cold calling schools. And the only reason I could call and figure out what schools were what was I found all the ones that were named after the cities they were in. So I called Pacoima Elementary School, Van Nuys Elementary School, Chatsworth Elementary School. Like that's how I knew they had to have one, right? Van Nuys Elementary School was where I ended up because the principal answered the phone and I just asked him one question: is this a general or a special education opening? And he said, "Oh, special ed, please hold." The next day, I was in an interview. 3 days after that, I was an SDC teacher.
Special day with more severe students with more severe learning differences.
Yeah, and sorry, yeah, they were 4th and 5th grade. And
you didn't have any credential, no methodology, no for special education. Oh,
I had a pulse.
You had what?
I had a pulse.
Because there's such a shortage.
At the time, right?
And
if
still,
you had a pulse, they were bringing you in. And so I graduated from Cal State Northridge on June 2nd. And on July 1st, I was a special day class teacher with a bachelor's degree in liberal studies. And my second not on my watch came on the interview day. And so during the interview, the assistant principal said, "Do you want to come see your classroom?" Mind you, I had not said yes yet. "Sure, let's go see the classroom." Okay. And there are 28 children in a classroom that's set up for kindergartners, except they're 4th and 5th graders. And there's utter chaos in the room. And so I walked in and I talked to the kids and they looked at me and said, "Are you mean?" I said, "I don't think I'm mean. I don't think so. I don't know, maybe." "Okay. Are you going to be our teacher?" "I don't know, maybe." Right. And just rapid fire questions. I said, "Oh, what are you working on?" And they had some worksheets in front of them and they were practicing how to write their ABCs. And I kid you not, they were kindergarten worksheets. On the bottom, it said K. Well, I'm not a teacher, but I know enough to know that that's not a 5th grade worksheet, right? And so that was the moment that I turned around to the assistant principal and said, "If you'll have me, I'll take the job." And so I started a couple weeks later. They didn't know that wasn't the process. They didn't know that's not how you get a job teaching, but they hired me, so I did what I was told. And that was when I knew these kids need better. They need better than this, right? They're in a kindergarten classroom with tiny little furniture. They are doing kindergarten work. And later on, I found boxes and boxes of the same worksheet over and over again. So that was when I had my next not on my watch. And that's when I knew that I was going to do this. And when I, in my heart, said, "Oh, not these kids. Absolutely not these kids. These are my people right here." Right? These are my people. Like they're the ones that were rambunctious. They were the ones that were smart mouth. They were the ones that were like got that little side eye and you got to watch out, right? Like those are my people right there. So we got along amazing. It was the best year I've ever had teaching. It was so good because I had no idea what I was doing. No idea. Nobody told me you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way, because I was teaching special ed. So nobody knew what I was supposed to be doing. So it was great autonomy. And so I called my sister that day and I said, I got a job. She said, where? What did you do? I said, I'm going to be a special day class. She lost her mind.
Yeah.
What? Are you crazy? What are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. That's not that. And I was like, it'll be fine. And it was. And I had a great time. And nobody told me that they didn't know how to do anything. So I assumed they should do everything. And since I didn't know what I was doing, we started with man versus man, man versus nature, man versus himself, protagonist, antagonist, because that's what I had just learned in college. So that's what I taught them. And that's what they learned. And the principal was like, what are you doing? Teaching them. What are you teaching? I don't know, whatever they taught me in college. Okay. They were great. They had a great time. We did great that year. The kids were having a good time, writing letters to congressmen. It was amazing.
Wow. So take the leap from that to superintendent in the Mojave Unified School District.
I don't really know how that ended up being, right? So I was a special day class teacher, had the best time ever. If I could go back there and recreate it, I would do it every time. By the time I left that school, I had met my best friend, and she was the gate teacher. And so by the time I left, because she stayed longer, we were combining our special day class and our gate class every day. We were co-teaching together every day. And that was just the most amazing experience ever. Yeah, we had a great time. And after a while, you can't tell who's who, right? That's the whole point. From there, I became a resource specialist in a different district where I got my first taste of the systems work that you and were doing then with the Principals Exchange. And that was also the click, like, oh, if you put this down and it gets repeated every time, it's a scientific method, right? Like if you can repeat the experiment every time and you get the same results, then it's working, right? So, okay, great. From there, I went to the county office of ed where they were having lots of revamping in the juvenile court schools. And the juvenile court schools had a need for special education reform and just updating in curriculum and instruction. And I stayed there for 6 years working with that team so that we could get it so that the educational process there was better. And I have to say, I'll admit it now, I filched some of your stuff and took it with me, and we did some great stuff in the juvenile halls, and the kids started getting some really good instruction. From there, I went back into just being a site principal. So I was elementary school principal, middle school principal. And then I missed my people and went back into special ed, did that for a while. And just by process of going to the next place that needed some help revamping, I ended up in Mojave.
And we might say you happened to end up there, and then the pandemic happened the next day or something like that. Wasn't that the case?
Well, so March 13th, we shut down nationwide, I think, at least in California. And March 13th was the day. And I was board approved here May 5th of the same year. And I started June 1st. So yeah, I'm coming from a district where we had a lot of stuff to do there. It was, brush fire after brush fire, pandemic, floods, fire, you name it.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot of things, more systems there that had nothing to do with academics, but lots of operations.
Yeah.
And it ended up that in Mojave, they were in need of somebody to come in and look at systems for every possible aspect of running a school district. And so we were just the right fit together at the time. And I think we're just moving and shaking now.
So, given that, can you please share some student outcomes that have begun to break the long legacy of a gap isn't a fair descriptor of achievement that starts off so low in every indicator? Maybe just give us a little thumbnail sketch of that. I know you don't like to dwell on that at all. I honor that. But we should know what your baseline looked like a little bit, so that then when you share what's starting to occur now by design, not by accident, we can appreciate the distance between those two.
Sure.
So give us a little baseline. When you got there?
So we could roll back to June of 2020, and we're starting to get a picture. I'm starting to get a picture of where I've come, where I've landed. And I came sight unseen. I had never been here before. I didn't know where Mojave was. In fact, my first day I went to the wrong building. I went to the church down the street because it looked like an official building. And where I was going couldn't possibly be the school district, but it was. And so, part of the first year, you're getting the lay of the land and you're learning. And a lot of people call it their listening tour. I had this amazing advantage that nobody was here. It was closed. We were online learning. And so I kind of had a captive audience with the staff, right? They were already online. There was really no way that they could say, I can't come to a meeting, I'm busy. And so I had this tremendous opportunity to meet with everybody quasi face to face by Zoom, right? And so I got to know all the teachers, all the principals, all the administrators, all the classified staff in a way that I don't think I would have had the ability to do had we hit the ground running everybody on campus, right? Because as soon as all the feet hit the ground, it's chaos. And so this was a more controlled chaos. And so I was able to get a lot of information faster. And then I had this group of English teachers, maybe mixed curriculum, but high school teachers, and they said, why don't you come up and have lunch with us? Sure. So I went and, you think, oh, this is a setup, right? It's a setup, but it wasn't. And so we went and had lunch together and they just gave me the rundown, right? This is what we're doing. This is what we've been trying to do. This is the results we're getting. We're not getting any results. And we collect all these points of data. We don't do anything with it. And can you help us? I said, sure. And at the time, lots of other things were going on that I needed to take care of that were just litigious things that were quite a distraction, right? It was quite an effort.
As I recall, achievement was
not there. So we looked at some preliminary data, and again, hard to get data at the time because they had suspended the CASP. There's, stuff that's really old.
Right.
Yeah, it's not business as usual when it comes to collecting or having fresh data. And so we have some local assessments, and I'm getting the results, and I'm feeling pretty strongly that there's an error, right? Because this couldn't possibly be true, because percentage of students proficient at each grade level, that can't possibly be that low. It's just not possible. But it was. And so we had the majority of our grade levels 0% proficient. And we had some grade levels that were the anomalies and had this amazing percent of proficiency. And then you start to question, well, how's that possible if everybody else is 0% proficient, right? And so things were just pretty dismal and not looking great. But
and before you do the big but, you should pardon my expression. Graduation rate, college prep rate.
So yeah, my first graduation, I had only been here for 6 weeks because I started on, in June and graduated, not even that long, 3 weeks. And so I'm at our first graduation, it's all virtual. And the principal at one of the high school is doing a little speech, right? Because it's literally a rolling film behind him of the graduates. And super excited, very excited to announce that 24% of the students graduated A through G.
Meaning you're eligible.
Correct, right? They had completed 24%. And if you're in a school where there's 3,500 graduates in a graduating class, that could be terrible, but still a good number of kids. But our graduating class was 44 kids in that school. And so when you do the math, I couldn't understand what the excitement was about. And so while they had a high graduation rate, quote unquote, it was really not what we were looking for, at least what I was looking for. It was a point of pride, which also told me we have a disconnect here. And in our other school, which is the bigger school, we have roughly 140 graduates there every year, and we had 17% that were graduating A through G. There were a few students that were applying to university and getting in, but that was because no matter what we did to them, they were going to be successful, right? They were the students that were self-motivated and they were going to do it because either they had somebody or they knew how to use Google better than we did. And so they were successful.
So just by way of benchmarking, at that time in the state, I believe the university preparatory graduation rate was about 40%. And the state has a majority of students that are lower income, et cetera, so comparable to your kids. So that's low by any standard. And in other episodes, we've talked about, oh, but not all kids are going to college. We're not talking about them going to college. We're talking about the caliber of the K-12 educational experience they have, their preparation for anything post-graduation, their ability to have every option in life available to them upon graduation, and not taking the premium classes, which, by the way, is not that far off from the graduation requirements. It's an extra math, an extra science, another foreign language class, basically, maybe an art. It's not far off. It's more of the mindset that is wrapped around the decision to not program students or encourage them or inspire them into that little extra layer, what we call the premium education, and what that means for how they're being viewed by a system, not by individuals. But so that is concerning. I can only imagine where
Yeah.
you.
So, and some people, you know, I call it an emergency, right? Like that's an emergency. That's not just concerning. That is, and I tell my staff all the time that this is a matter of life and death. This is an emergency.
Catherine, I would also, in your context, where there's really no industry except for one, and then the one is humongous, like aerospace. Your whole world could change if you get in there. How many of your students historically were prepared to have any access to working?
8.
8.
8. And so, you know, I tried to focus on all of the positive. We are the only district in, well, actually west of the Rockies that has an FAA certified airframe and power plant program. And it was here then too. And so what does that mean? It means that we have a program where our students can go through a CTE program, of the Career Technology Education, Technical Education pathway. And at the end of that pathway, they're certified airplane mechanics. That is a very lucrative profession, especially when you're right by an air and spaceport and Edwards Air Force Base and, right? The 14 freeway, which runs through Mojave, is called Aerospace Highway.
Right.
And so if you think about where you are, that's amazing, but only 8 kids were going through the program.
And that
And
could
us.
transform not just lives, but the entire neighborhood.
Absolutely.
That's what happened in Whittier over here, where the students, the school system was improved so much, as you know, outside of Los Angeles over the course of 15, 18, 20 years. The socioeconomics of that entire community has been uplifted. You can't buy a house anymore. And it used to be the lowest rent district anywhere because kids go to school, they get a career, they stay in the neighborhood, they buy and they build and enrich. It's just this self-feeding, beautiful loop. So the missed
that's the goal right there, right? Is exactly what you're talking about. So that's our goal. It's my goal.
So now you've put in some things, and I'll ask you that next. What have you learned? What have you surmised through your experience up through today that would be helpful for other people who are fighting this legacy of demographics determining destiny for the same demographic groups of students over and over and over again? Before I ask you that, titillate us just a bit with some of the outcomes that you're starting to see that are the result of these efforts that you've put in to place.
So without getting too much into the absolutely amazing detail, I can focus on the end results, right?
Yeah.
This is the beginning of my 6th year here, which means that this graduating class would have been 7th grade when I got here. And today we are projected to have 19 kids at one school graduate with their associate's degree for this year, and 5 at the other school, at the other high school. Last year there were 16 and 1. And of the 16, 4 of them graduated with multiple associate's degrees and on the honor roll at their community college. The year before that, there were 16. And before that, it had been 5 years since anybody had graduated with an associate's degree, and there were 6. And the demographics of who graduated has completely reshuffled, right? I won't say that it's changed because the original group of demographics are still in the mix, but now it's very diverse and reflects our community. It is amazing to watch students walk into a principal or counselor's office and say, I got a C in a class. I need to take the class over again because I have to have at least a B. And that's a new mindset for our students because we've eliminated the choice for it not to be. It's not a quite, we've changed the narrative, right? And so one of the things that I've asked since the very beginning is to speak in the affirmative. We're going to stop saying, don't do that, and start speaking and giving feedback in what we want to see and not trying to omit what we don't want to see or abolish what we don't want to see. And so the question is not, are you going to college? It's where are you going to college? And I don't want to hear, are you going to go to college from anybody anymore? The question should be, where are you thinking of going to college? And do I know that not everybody's going to go to college? No, I don't know that. I refuse to know that. They may put it off. They may not go directly after high school. They may have some other choices that they want to explore first. But in the end, they may all go to college. They just may all start at different ages. Okay, the choices that they make after they leave me, I can't help. But I can leave an influence on them and they'll already know you don't have a choice not to go to college. You already did. It's already done. Because
So even beyond those with their associates, many more taking those college classes while they're in high school.
used to be many more, now it's all. And so it is, oh yeah. So we've changed a little bit since we talked last. We have changed our master schedule to make sure that all 9th graders take College 101, that all 10th graders take English and something else, and all 11th graders. So we've just done the dual enrollment and the concurrent enrollment to just be part of what we do. And the course study by grade, if you go to one of our schools, you are a college student. It's not an option. It's just what we do. And we'll support you. We'll make sure you have all the supports and that you have tutoring after school. We have Saturday school if you need it. And it's tutoring of what you just learned in class and what you're going to learn tomorrow. It's not 8th grade standards because you're in 10th grade, right? All of those things I know very well, and so does everybody watching, that a 15-year-old does not have the sophistication or the wherewithal to make a lifelong decision at the age of 15. And so we've eliminated that choice. So as a 9th grader, you're taking 2 college classes. As a 10th grader, you're taking, and if you stay with us for all 4 years, you will graduate with an associate's degree.
So, Catherine, by the way, your mobility rate's very high just by the nature of the community. So when we look at data in places like yours, we disaggregate for those students that have been touched by your treatment the entire time versus those. So very high turnover rate within a year and multiple years.
It's about 20%.
Yeah, which you think about multiplied by every year.
Absolutely.
The number of students who end up graduating across the stage as a senior compared to the number of students and which students were there in the 9th grade or much less in kindergarten. It's a smaller pool to look at. So I would argue your results are much stronger than what might appear if you look at your top line once you start to disaggregate that way. Do you offer the college classes then on your campus, sis?
We do.
And who are the teachers?
Our teachers who are qualified go through the hiring process with the community college and they become.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Mhm.
Fascinating. I'm more fascinated by the fact that of what that does to the academic press across the organization than the fact that it's a college class. But just what that does to buoy everything, not just at the high schools, but knowing that that has to do something to the psyche of the systems within the institutions at the middle level and at the elementary level, all the way down to TK.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And so there's that metacognitive process that says, I have to do this because these kids are going to college and I have to do my part. Right. And so what does that look like? I better plan well. I better make sure that this is academically rigorous. I better make sure that by the time they get to third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, they're ready for sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, and the teachers can just keep accelerating them. And we're seeing it. So I spend about 9 hours a week in classrooms and I send feedback to my teachers in the form of an email, and I copy their administrators. And what I've seen just this year, because we're in, I think, day 12, um, we've been concentrating so much on so little, and I'll tell you what that means in a second, that we're starting to see so much more academic rigor that's just a given, right? It's just a given that you're going to use vocabulary that is 4 or 5 years above their instructional level in reading, because of course they understand you. It's conversational English. They know very well what all those words mean. So don't simplify your vocabulary. So I was in a TK classroom 3 times this week, 3 different classrooms, and therefore they're TK, right? They're the littles of the little. I have a teacher who used to teach 6th grade, is now a TK teacher, which is amazing. And she hasn't changed the way that she speaks to her students, because why would you? So her students are listening to her talk about the audience and the delivery and the tone of voice and how she's the presenter and they're going to be presenters, and how we have just the vocabulary is ultra high. And of course they understand you because you just taught them. So whatever you teach them is what they're going to learn, right? And so I can see there's no more speaking to their level, quote unquote. Now we're bringing them to our level, and it
I,
is working.
I always think of when I get the argument or I hear it that students' language is so low. You know, they're non-English speaking, they're non-Spanish speaking too. They're the non-nons or the
Mhm.
various ways we talk about students. And then I watch those very same students watch Transformers cartoons. Have you heard the language on those anime Transformers? The just transformer, just the word transformation. They have transformed. They will be transforming. Just the conjugation of that one verb all over that cartoon series with kids copying it, and then going into other settings where we use very informal
Right.
language.
And you can hear them using high level vocabulary on the playground when they become Charizard, right? Or they become a character and they use all the same dollar words, right? Instead of the nickel words. And they understand everything we're talking about. They watched Harry Potter, they've watched all of those movies, and they could comprehend all of that. And we're educators, we understand that their comprehension level is a lot higher than their instructional reading level. So why not capitalize on it, right? Why not? And so I'm seeing that, and it is instructionally, when you have high school teachers doing whole group and small group, which is traditionally a little kid practice, right? Like little kids go into reading groups, little kids go into centers. But when your secondary teachers know that this is the best way to get students that individualized feedback and attention and acceleration, it catches on, and it is very powerful when the students start to do it too, right? When they are the ones asking to go into small group, when they're the ones that want to do focus discussions, and they're the ones wanting to do a circle of discussion, etc., and they're asking for more. And the most powerful thing we've had is for students to go off to university and come back and give us feedback about what they were missing and what they needed more of to be better prepared to be at the university. And the teachers will sit down with them and incorporate that feedback into their planning, right? Because we've had that happen. We've got, students who went off to UC San Diego, UC Santa Barbara, and they come back for breaks and we call them and say, so how's it going? Right. And they tell you exactly how it's going. They're never going to have a filter. And so we bring them back. We've brought them back twice now and asked them what can we do better? And they've absolutely told us that they need more writing instruction, right? They need more methodical teaching of writing methods in all genres so that they can be better prepared. Well, that's your customer base, right? They just told you what was lacking. Now let's go. And the teachers eat it up. They love it. They're able to say, oh, I can do that. I can totally do that. And they can. And they do.
So, Katherine, you're so optimistic. And it is day 12. You're not as tired as you will be on day 150. But you're getting results. And it's taken years. And through a pandemic, it's taken years to get the entire mindset shift. And I'm sure that it's a daily goal of yours. I'm sure that there's work you must engage in every day to keep that hope alive, to keep that idea going. What I'm taking away from our conversation is, in my head, my question is, okay, so what's the solution? If we were asked by people who are out in schools and districts and have students who struggle, not individually, but in entire groups that represent entire groups, demographically or even gender or whatever the clustering is, what would you say? I think I know what you might be leaning into these days, but what would you say? How do you fix it?
For me, and in our situation, in a place where we had obstacles, I think the very first thing after the listening and the kind of figuring out what's happening where it is to become an incredible filter, right? As a superintendent, I feel like, and my very first principal told me this, when you become a principal, this is what you need to do. I filter out everything away from the classrooms. It's not going to be impactful for teaching and learning.
Quiet the noise.
Quiet the noise, right? What I try to do for everybody, and what I try to get everybody to do, is focus on a very narrow area until it's amazing, right? And so what I liken it to is, if we had, is a terrible thing to liken it to, but it's the only way to do it, right? Is that if you had an acute illness, right, and that illness was centered in a particular part of your body, do you want the medication to go to all of your body or just to that one particular spot, right? Are you trying to attack all of it, or are you just trying to get rid of that one particular spot of illness? And thus
even though you're everywhere.
Absolutely, right? Like everything's a mess,
Yeah.
but this one particular spot is what's killing you. And so that needs to be taken care of first. And for us, that was literacy. It was absolutely making sure that kids could read on grade level, which means something very different at every single grade level, and making sure everybody understood what that grade level called for. But let's focus on this one thing until, boy, do we do it so well. So well. And then we'll add the next layer. In the meantime, I'm going to say no to almost everything else, right? I'm going to say, no, we're not doing that. We're not cluttering. We're not getting distracted. As far as my role, it's also like, don't worry about the politics. Don't worry about the noise coming out of every place that has really very little to do with us, or at least in the classroom. Let me worry about the budget. Let me worry about, like, I'll make sure you have everything you need in the classroom, and the message is consistent. Every dime that comes into this district is for kids. And so I will make sure that you have what you need in the classroom. You leave all the other stuff to me, because that's my job. You teach the kids. And once that's fixed, everything else will take care of itself, right? Like the situation that we're in geographically, because it's geographically relevant, right? Like we're far from everything. Once we are at a place where people go, what are they doing over there? Why are they getting such good results? Where we are will matter less because people will start to move here. People will start to want to be here because they want their children to get the best possible education. And our results are showing this is where it's happening. And so some of the other problems will start to resolve. If we get a high enough population here, we'll get another grocery store. If we get a high enough population here, we'll get medical clinics. If we get high enough population, we'll have, mass transit, which we don't now. And maybe there'll be Uber drivers, and maybe we'll get something more than one Starbucks. Those types of things will come because that's where people will want to be.
So you're
And
leading with academic success. That's your
absolutely.
focus. And literacy is a content area focus. What is your thought about, let's imagine another district recognizes that literacy, language development is the hugest area of growth for students, and it also yields the greatest results for life outcomes and so forth. It correlates to all other subjects, etc. Is your thought training teachers? Like, the first thing, is it a teacher solution? How do you see the solution, in your Catherine brain, to turning around literacy in a district?
Well, first, I think you start with the end, right? The end has to be where your mind starts, is where do you want this to end up? And how do you want, this sounds kind of corny. What do you think the legacy is to be, right? Like that we have a consistent 86% student proficiency with 20%, 18, 14%, whatever the leftover is, almost proficient. Is that where you want to be? Because if that's where you want to be, that's what you start with. And then how do you get there? Where are you now? What's it going to take to get there? And plan. And that's a master plan, right? That's not just academics. That's what do your facilities need to look like? If that's going to be your outcome, do you have enough lab space to make sure that everybody graduates with all of the labs that they need? Do you have the parking lot to make sure that all the teachers that you're going to need to teach those classes have a place to park? And what does your food service look like? What does your transportation look like? What do your grounds look like? And that's how do you map that out over the next 5 or 6 years so that as you grow, everything matches your pace, right? So that's the first part, is what's the plan? And now where are we? Where are we with curriculum and instruction? Because nothing's going to happen unless our teachers know where we're going. And then what is the setup, the model for how students are going to access, and how are they going to get through it, and how are we going to know that that's happening? So that's the system, right? How are you going to set up your system so that it's reviewed, and how often, and then what do you do with it? And then how do you relay that information back to your staff so that they can make improvements? And it goes back to the very first conversation I had with that group of teachers. We're gathering all this data and we're not doing anything with it. If you're doing that, it's just a rote exercise. There's no point in doing it, right? There's no point in collecting that data if it's not going to drive instruction. It's not going to drive your practice. And so once you figure that out, then you start to determine what is the training that's needed. Do our teachers know how to teach reading? We all get the same classes mostly in our prep, right? We all take the RICA. We all took the whatever version of the MSAT, CST, whatever. We all took the tests and we have credentials, but did we really understand, or were we putting it on the test and moving on, right? And then I also believe that when you've been teaching a while, you've forgotten a lot, right? You get into a routine and it works and you think it's working. And then is there a critical eye for you? And what did you forget that you knew before that you could bring back in? So there's that collaboration time for teachers where they can brainstorm all of that and remember all the stuff they forgot, right? And then put it to good use. But it has to be driven by what you've just seen. And then one of the things I get accused of is, you're teaching to the test. Yeah, we are. We are teaching to the test because I went to college. I got a study guide. I remember the professor telling me what was going to be on the exam. It wasn't a surprise. Why are we trying to surprise the kids? Yes, this is going to be on the test, so pay attention. Like, I'm going to teach you this. We're going to practice it. And if it didn't work, I'm going to teach you a different way. But then the tools, we give them the tools and make sure. I mean, part of it is get out of their way and let them teach sometimes, right?
On the teaching to the testing, that comes from the real risk in the history in the past, as you well know, where here was a test, and then we would, have occasions where people would actually teach only that which was on the test in the way, like item for item.
Yeah, for sure.
That's different from teaching toward a test. Like it's
Correct.
impossible to teach the SAT item, but do we teach toward the SAT? Yes, that's called high school.
Right.
That language came from something real historically, but it just doesn't apply.
Yeah, I mean, it could have, right? It could have at the time, but we're talking about something that's highly secured now, right? Like it's not, we can't act even if we wanted to. And we're just talking about exposing them to the types of questions. What is it they're asking? Are you used to this? Like, do you?
The level of ensuring that the level of rigor matches that whatever grade level expectation is and however it's required. Katherine, I haven't heard you mention administration leaders. What role do you see in the solution set for them?
So I think the very first thing is everybody has to be on the same page, right? Like we all have to be working toward that same goal. We all have to know what the goal is. It has to be this, what I call circles of communication, and how you put messages out so that they are received by the right person at the right time so that they can answer questions, because everything gets out in a certain way, right? Because nobody likes to not have the answers to the questions that are being asked from anybody. But if they have a clear understanding of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and that they can answer questions, that's part of it. The other part of it is they have to be comfortable taking that risk to try some new strategy with kids, right? To try some. So our administrators have to move with grace, right? They have to understand that we have to try 6 different things to get all the kids to learn the same one concept.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. It's okay to do that. And no, kids don't have to sit in their chair if they're, if they are laying on the ground with a clipboard and they are still doing what they need to do, it's fine. It's totally fine. That's not the objective. The objective is here, compliance is different, right? I'm not trying to get kids to sit in the chair for 6 hours. I'm trying to get them to learn the concept. And so there's that understanding, and for some it's a mind shift, right? It's a different mindset than sitting for 6 hours in a 2x2 desk with a pencil, number 2 pencil, and pink pearl eraser. So that's the first part, but we all have to be very knowledgeable in what we're talking about. So if we're teaching our head teachers in charge, who are our principals, a new strategy and concept, we all have to be able to go in and do a demo lesson. And we all have to be able to have the principal relieve the principal so they can go in and do a demo lesson. And we have to make the same commitments that I said before. I spend a lot of time in classrooms. The expectation is that all administrators are spending a lot of time in classrooms. And it's not to critique, it's to support, right? It's to go in and give positive feedback when it's very evident that somebody is doing exactly what they need to be doing, and constructive feedback with supports offered when you can see that there's an area that's not going well. And also to debrief that later. If I'm not willing to take the time out of my day to do that, how do I expect schools who have 380, 560 kids on their campus all coming up them at once to stop their day and get into classrooms?
Yeah.
And then what is the commitment? If I get a principal who calls me and say, it's my time to go into classrooms and I have this happening on my campus, the answer from all of the cabinet or district level administration should be, I'll be right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because that way I can take over that situation and you go do what the most important thing in a school is. You go and help instruction. I'll take care of the other stuff. And again, a filter, right? So there's been many times when I've had a principal call me, or even anybody, but mostly me because I like it. And you just have to stop what you're doing and say, we have to do this after 3:30 when the kids go home. I'll be back. And we go. and I take over, the parent who's upset about whatever eraser got thrown out, or that so and so and they're having an argument, or the bus is late, the milk is spoiled, all of that stuff, because that can't be the most important thing for the head teacher in charge. The head teacher in charge needs to commit to supporting their teachers.
I see. So I was hearing the role for the leaders. I just wasn't listening for it. So you have your teachers, you have your counselors, and then you have your head teachers in charge, and that's your admin, and they're rolled up in your head. It's not that you don't promote or move your initiative forward, bypassing your leaders. You're embedding them, front loading them, and expecting that they know as much as everybody else, at least as the head of that unit, whatever that is. Catherine, I think the theme.
Sorry, I guess that wasn't very clear, but yeah, it is.
No, it's because it's such an embedded assumption for you. See, but I listen to a lot of people, and often, oh, achievement is low. It's a teacher's fault. They need professional development. Like, I'm not hearing you
They
say that.
might need professional development, but first they got to figure out what that is, right? Like,
There's a whole universe of stuff that surrounds a school system, that will make that either a fruitful task or impotent, and not create any results for students. This is the theme of what I'm hearing you say, which, if I had to summarize it, it would be expectations, increasing expectations across the board, across the system. Everybody says that they'll like have high expectations, but you gave us many ways that operationally you've defined that. You're talking about setting the floor, that level of expectation with what grade level is. You're talking about setting, and casting that from the idea that all students are college going, period. They're all going to be college prepared. And then from there, they can do whatever they want. You're talking about front loading your administrators deeply so that they're the leaders of the, looking at teachers and counselors and other staff as leaders, but setting the expectation that they are in the front, in the side, and in the back as everybody moves. It's not a spectator sport for them. They're in doing lessons, they're in doing coaching, that's clarifying the expectation for their role, that casting it from that end result, that vision of student achievement several years down the way. You're talking about district office, setting the expectation that the district office has a very central role in creating the conditions for the schools to be able to do what they need to do that eventually. And with all of that system swirling around and shaping that, what's coming through like headlights is the classroom. That the action is in the classroom, but the solution is not alone in the classroom. The solution is all this other stuff to make it so that the conditions are such that powerful teaching and learning to a specific, not an abstract image of high expectations, but a measurable, is what I mean to say, high level of academic rigor is achieved. That's, and I can see the through line from your not on my watches, from working with from your parents having different experiences and expectations that they responded to, from your experience in special education, which that's crazy, the way you fell into that. Working with adjudicated students, which is, we have so many thoughts and opinions and ideas, implicit and explicit, about marginalized or kids on the margin, or if they're marginalized, that as well. My brain is full right now. What would be the one piece of advice you would give people? You could say, okay, Catherine, you've got one final comment to share that would be helpful to people trying to do the right thing even in the most challenged situations like yours.
Just one.
Yeah.
I think that for me, what has been the most helpful is to focus narrowly at first, right? Do something really, really, really well at first and not let so many things get in the way and distract. Be patient. I am the least patient person you have ever met in your life. And you and I have had words about that more than once. It is very difficult for me to wait for things to work well. But when you are making a systemic change that you want to not be people dependent, person dependent, it has to be slow and steady. And it's going to take way longer than any of us want, but it is the way it goes, right? If we are to be successful, it has to be something that will outlive us. And so the only way to do that is to make sure that, like in Whittier, right? Because I know this to be true, you couldn't take their systems away from them with a machete, right? Like you could not do it. They will fight you tooth and nail because they know that it works. And we are in the world's most impatient industry. If
Yeah.
it doesn't work, throw the box out, get a new box, right? And I mean that in the most literal way. When, one program didn't work, pack it up, throw it out, get the next program, because this one has to be the magic bullet. And it never is. It really never is. The basics are very clear in that you have to get through the systematic teaching of reading using actual methods of teaching reading, not gleaning. And that's the only thing that really works. So if we're too impatient, we just throw the babies out with the bathwater, and that never gets us anywhere. It gets us what we've always gotten, or at least what we've gotten since I've been in school, right? And we have to change that. So we got to stay focused and be patient. And as far as being the superintendent in that role, it's managing expectations with your board and your community, right? It's managing and make sure that you know and they know how long this takes, that they are a part of the discussion, that they are frequently updated, that they are invited to the table. I mean, the board, of course, but key players in the community, right? So that they know things are changing. It just takes time. And you manage the patience part. It's hard for me. That part is really very hard for me, but I'm getting better at it. And it's, we don't have a single grade level that is not proficient, that has 0% proficiency, right? We're not a single one left. There were some classes this year that were less than 20 points from standard. There were classes that changed their distance from standard. They improved it by 74 points was one, but 124 was another.
So for the audience and the exam you're talking about, improving 70 points or 100 points, 35 points-ish is the equivalent to about a school year's worth of learning. So that's humongous growth.
According to our state, 15-point growth is significant. And so it is, was every single classroom that great of growth? No, they weren't, but we're getting there. And it is when we look at not just the kids that are scoring proficient, but the ones that almost were proficient. And so if we look at those two groups, it is substantial. And that says nothing about the students who have been with us for 3 years or more, right? The growth in the 3 years or more has been unbelievable. And I think that we mentioned earlier that our students we have a lot of kids that come and go. And I think that what we'll see, it's my prediction, maybe I'll be wrong, I don't think I will be, but it's my prediction that next year and the following year, our rate of kids coming and going is going to start to drop. How do I know this? Because kids are coming back. Before they used to transfer out. Oh no, I'm going someplace else for a better education. And now they're coming back and they're not leaving as much. And what's very funny is they're starting to bring their parents with them. So if their parents are teachers in different districts, their teacher parents are coming to work here because they want to be a part of it. And so we used to struggle to find the best teachers. We're not 100% there yet, but we're not on that struggle bus anymore, right? We are not hurting, and we can hire and fill our classrooms, which of course makes things a lot easier when you have teachers, right? So, but when you're bringing your parents back because your parents want you to be in our systems because they know that you have the opportunity to leave high school with a college degree, it says something. And when you have an adult school that's doing what our adult school is doing, I call it the best possible way to burn the candle at both ends, right? When you have 74 students at the adult school graduating with a diploma last year, and this year it's day 12 and there are already 2 graduates. We predict that this year there's going to be 85 adults graduate. Well, those are the parents of our kids. Attitude about education start to change like that. You get what we had here last night, which was at back to school night at our middle school that was historically the problem school, right? The one where everybody was always in trouble and the scores were zeros, etc. When you only have standing room only at the back to school night because the community is that much more involved and they want their students and they see the progress, now you're starting to make some impact, and the attitude towards education has improved, where that's the community focus. When it becomes the community focus, now the message to everybody is, oh boy, look what we've done. We better keep up, right? Like, so now the stakes keep going higher and higher, right? And so I'm good with that. Like, we just keep.
Wow. Katherine, what a remarkable story. I hadn't heard those last few points that you made about the teachers coming back and about the adult school. Congratulations. It's an inspiration, heavy lift, as they say, but so worthy, so worthy. And thank you for everything that you do every day. Thank your entire district for everything you do every day for those kids, those families, and that entire community. I know only wonderful things are going to happen. It's a choice to be there. And thank
We
you
have
for
an amazing team. This is just an amazing team.
making that choice. And to our audience, thank you for spending this time with us with another great real life lesson about what it takes to ensure that every student receives that premium education that historically has been reserved for only some. But you're giving access to that education to all students. And so thank you, Katherine, from the bottom of my heart. I stand beside you and I'm in awe at every step that you take with your beautiful district. All my love to you and hugs and kisses to all of your beautiful students.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Shattering Inequities requires more than conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future of education together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for all students. Thanks for listening.